Thanks for tuning in today for our special 4G podcast. I'm Pastor Brian, and joining me today is Edgewood member Lance Heuer. Lance is a couple thousand miles south of us. He is in Mexico at El Monte. These weekly 4G podcasts focus on gathering, growing, giving, and going with the gospel. And Lance has been living out all four of those, and most recently focusing on our fourth G, going with the gospel. And so we'll get to that in a bit, but I wanted to just share, if you're listening to this via audio podcast, we have invites ready for you this weekend for Easter. We're calling it the Awe of Easter. And if you're tuning in online, here's how they look. Here's a big one. And then these are smaller invites. I have these in my wallet. I gave 2 of these away already this morning. I encourage you to pick some up this weekend. So Lance, thanks for joining us. It's good to see you, buddy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Lance was showing me there's a hammock in the background, and I asked him if how much time he spent on that. And what did you say, Lance?
Yeah, I said 0 because there's about a 50-foot drop-off on the other side of it.
Oh, that's good. Hey, Lance, let's start with this. How did the Lord save you?
Yeah, well, that's quite a story. It was started back in June of 2022 is when I was saved, June 28th. I was raised in a Christian family, Christian farm family. My mom was especially devout. So I had all the training growing up in a Lutheran church. I had everything provided for me in that regard. But I also had an anxiety disorder, and I didn't know what it was. It was basically a fear of speaking in public. Something like this we're doing right now would have terrified me. I would have had a panic attack. And if anybody knows what those are, it's just, it's uncontrollable. You really can't stop it once it starts. So I had prayed to God for years to please relieve me of this because it was hindering me in everything that I did. And when that relief didn't come, I guess I got angry, and I walked away from God. I basically decided that if the support wasn't there, I was out. So as soon as I left the home, I left. But I found out I still had the anxiety, of course, and I kind of self-treated that. Treated it with alcohol and drugs. During my 20s, lived a very promiscuous party life, but I graduated college. I always managed to make some money, although I had a lot of financial difficulties. But then when I was 29 years old, I was reading, I think it was a Newsweek magazine, and it was an article on anxiety. And I'm reading this, I thought, well, wait a minute, that's what I have. So I went to Vera French there in Davenport, and they prescribed me medication that I took, and it completely took it away.
Wow. At 29, so you lived with it for a long time.
A long time. And so my life normalized out then. I got married. I was able to maintain good jobs. I went on to a successful banking career, became a senior vice president at a bank, successful by all measures. But during my 20s, that life trailed after me. I had paid for some abortions during that time period. I knew it was wrong when I did it. I knew it was wrong, but kind of bought the lies. It was legal, so we did it. Took the easy way out. So that haunted me. And the older I got, the more I became convinced that the Bible was true, God's real, Jesus is real, everything, the Trinity. And so it really started to haunt me. The older I got, the more it haunted me because I didn't think I could possibly be forgiven for what I'd done.
So it didn't go away. The guilt kept increasing, right? Okay.
Yeah, and I talked to no
Mm.
one. I had told my wife before we got
Sure,
married,
because there's shame with
but she
that
was the
then,
only
right?
person.
You're probably like
Oh,
embarrassed
deep
and
shame. I'm still
yeah,
ashamed of
yeah,
it, but I only tell this to try to help
right.
others. Yeah, no, I was deeply ashamed of it. It affected me my whole life.
Mm.
So I lived with this dark
Mm.
shadow for 40
Mm.
years. But then I got to be 50s, my 60s, and the panic was becoming real that I was going to hell.
Wow.
And I was sure of it. I thought I was doomed. I thought there's just no way I can come back from
And
this.
because you were so low, you probably felt like you deserved it too, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, and I
So
still
that's
do.
like just feeling hopeless. Like, where do you go? Like, how do you get
Right,
rid of
right,
that conviction,
right,
that guilt? Yeah.
right. Very dark feeling. But to all outside appearances, I was the epitome of
Mm.
success. I had a house there in Quad Cities, a house in Florida, a family that I loved, grandkids, um, money, everything. To the outside, I even had people tell me, "Oh man, you've got a perfect life going."
Mm.
But yet, I always knew this other side of
Mm.
it, and it was getting worse and worse. I couldn't sleep
Oh,
anymore.
wow.
Uh, yeah, it was horrible. So that takes us up then to 2022, and there was a whole series of events that happened as Jesus was working to save me.
I love how
Uh,
you said that. He was like drawing you
yeah,
to himself, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. But I eventually found my way into a pregnancy resource center
Now
there
back
in
up. What,
Mullen.
didn't you see a
Hmm.
newsletter that led you there?
Yes, and Edgewood members Jim and Marcia
Okay.
Kohler were on the front page of the
Okay.
newsletter, and I had donated money to pregnancy resources in the
Right, because you
past.
knew the Kohlers
So,
through business connections.
right,
So you
right,
donated
right,
money. That put you on the mailing list at Pregnancy Resources because I'm sure they were very thankful
right,
for your giving. So then now you're getting the newsletter. So describe to those
right.
listening what that was like. You saw Jim and
Yeah,
Marcia's picture on the front. Jim and Marcia are
right,
just so pro-life and have done so much for pregnancy
right,
resources. So you were intrigued. So what did you do? Did you open it up?
right, right. Yeah, I read the front page to see about them, of course, and then I opened it up, and when I opened it up on the inside, they were announcing the men's ministry and who Ken White heads up. So I saw that, I read the article, and I had thought about calling pastors in the past, but never could work up the
Hmm.
nerve. But this finally, it sat on my desk for probably 2 months, looking at it every day.
Really?
Finally, yeah, I was so
Yeah.
ashamed.
But you were probably also
So,
like, oh, maybe there's some hope here. Maybe there's some help because
right,
otherwise you would have thrown that
right,
away. You kept it there for some reason.
right, right. Yeah, God can be persistent.
It's because he loves you, man.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, then that led me to call Pregnancy Resources, and then on June 28th, 2022, I walked through the doors, made an appointment, walked through the doors, and I met with Ken White and Jonathan
Mm.
Hutton, who's also a
Both
member,
both
of
members
course.
of Edgewood, right?
Yeah, yeah, which is how I ended up coming to Edgewood. But anyway, that first night, we sat and met, and it was very emotional. It's the first time I had talked about it, but I confessed everything to him. I told him the whole ugly
The
story,
first time you were
everything.
there.
Yeah, the first night, within the first half
Well,
hour.
here's the thing I
Yeah,
know about
I,
those two guys. You probably saw grace. You saw these guys, I can tell them anything. They're going to accept me, they're going to
hmm
love me, and they're going to help me find forgiveness. Hmm.
right, right, right. Yeah, they weren't critical of me. They weren't shaming me. Nothing like that. They were very concerned for me, and they just wanted to help. And so, like I say, I confessed everything. We prayed. I remember praying like never before. Ken did most of the praying. I couldn't tell you what he said, but obviously was effective. But anyway, we got up then to leave. It was going to be a 9-week course. This was just the first night. They giving me the books and getting ready to go. So I got up and I thought, well, I felt a little different. I thought maybe this will do me some good here. Maybe I'll find some relief. And as we were walking out, Jonathan mentioned the thief on the cross, and we kind of joked about that, how he was the luckiest man ever lived. Yeah, I didn't realize I was about to become just as lucky.
Oh, by God's grace. So what happened next?
Yeah. So I went home. My house is right on the edge of the Mississippi. It was a beautiful night in June, and I was looking out across the river and thinking about everything, of course. But then I had a sensation, and I think that's when the Holy Spirit came into me. It struck me like a smack in the chest. It was like a breath in and a breath out, and I felt like a totally different person. I felt like the chains were off, everything. I was free.
And I remember you saying it was during that time and even meeting with those two guys that you surrendered, right? That you surrendered your life to Christ, you repented of your sins, and then the Lord gave you that affirmation that he heard, and now the Holy Spirit was living inside of you. He sealed you as his child, adopted you into his family, and forgave you for all of your sins. Wow. Praise God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then so that night, I was on my porch. I was alone by then, and because I really didn't realize what was happening. My church never talked about being born again or anything like that. It just never, at least if they did, I didn't hear it. But I was on the porch that night, and it all hit me what had happened, and just dropped me to my knees.
Like literally?
In thanks, literally, in thanks and praise. And yeah, it was like, wow, I'm saved.
You've never been the same, right?
No, no. Everything changed.
Yep. So
I joke
go ahead.
I joke with Jonathan and Ken that they need to put a little disclaimer because I had to fill out a form that first night. I need to put a little disclaimer on there that you may die and be reborn.
Caution, your old life may end and your new life may begin.
Yeah, and it's going to be a lot different.
I love that story of how God redeemed you and saved you and forgave you. I'm wondering if you could just share with our listeners then, you came to Edgewood shortly after that or around that time. What was your reaction after coming to Edgewood the first time?
Yeah, well, the first time was that first Sunday after I was saved. I came with Ken. Ken and Jonathan invited me, and we came to like the 9:00 service there. And I really, other than Christmas and Easter, I hadn't been to church for decades. And so it was a very emotional experience. I still remember one of the songs you played was "Glorious Day," and that's still my favorite song. And I remember you preaching. I don't remember exactly what you preached, but I remember thinking, "Oh, he's talking to me." It felt like you were looking right at me, talking to me. And it was just a very powerful experience. Ken and I were both naturally emotional, and it was a wonderful experience.
As I recall, I think I met you that first weekend as well, and got to just share in the joy of your salvation. It was so evident. So, hey, spend a few minutes bragging about Ken White and Jonathan. What stands out to you about those two guys?
Yeah, well, after that, we went ahead and completed the entire course, so that we were together for another, I think it was 9 or 10 weeks, and we became best friends. But they both became confidants, and they helped guide me into my new life. It was rocky for me. My family totally rejected me.
You paid a price, didn't you?
They didn't. Yeah. Like I joked, there's fine print in the contract that my family basically wanted me to deny Jesus, that it was real. And obviously I wasn't going to do that. To them, it's kind of a fantasy. So, please join me in praying for them. I pray for them every day.
It strikes me there's a book out called The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Mm-hmm.
And you certainly paid a cost, and you're willing to do that. And I think having those two guys in your world helped you keep pressing forward, right? Because I'm sure the temptation would be to fold, or like, I don't want to lose my family, and man, I have a ton of
I don't know. Maybe I'm just stubborn, but I never even considered going back. I was so certain I was saved. I couldn't do that. So, but Ken and Jonathan were both there with me every step of the way. They're great men. They were both strong Christians. They guided me through the Bible. I really hadn't read the Bible since I was a kid. So after all that, I read the entire ESV study Bible with the notes and everything, trying to get up to speed. And they helped me with that. I had a lot of questions, and they were always there.
Yeah, you said you had to catch up, right?
Yeah, very much so.
So last summer,
it was like I dropped onto a battlefield without boot camp.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Which motivated you to read even more, right? Because you knew you were in a battle.
Right.
So let's fast forward from there. We organized a mission trip last summer, and you signed up and you went to Mexico, El Monte,
yes,
with a group of brothers and sisters who are very dear to you now. You became very close with that team. So what led you to go that first time, and what were some highlights for you?
Yes, well, I'd always been kind of interested in international travel. I had traveled quite a bit anyway, but it really appealed to me to spend some time on a mission trip to see what happened. Kind of, I'd heard a lot about it, kind of see just for myself. What it turned into for me was an experience of being with a group of dedicated Christians for the first time in a long time, maybe ever. And they kind of showed me what they're like, what their lives are like, everything, how they pray. I really didn't even know that sort of thing. And, they kind of took me by the hand. They called me the baby Christian all the time.
Oh, that's beautiful. I just got goosebumps.
Yeah. They're wonderful people, and I learned so much just watching them and seeing how they operated, and just the joy that they have in their lives. And and I thought, we're on the right track here. And of course, here at El Monte, it's a beautiful setting. You couldn't hardly find a more beautiful place.
It is beautiful.
And so that helps. We worked on the men primarily worked on a construction project that time. So it really isn't my thing. I was more of a gopher, but it was a chance to see something actually going up that's going to be there for a long, long time, going to be used.
Well, and it strikes me.
So it was a life change.
Yeah, with that as a metaphor, the Lord was doing construction on your own heart, right? And helping to build some things into you, some disciplines of the Christian life. You saw these godly men and women. You had young Emma on leading, and there's another young woman. I just spaced on her name. Another I was going to say, because there were two Emmas on the trip, and all different ages, and it was beautiful. So you're in El Monte right now. So did you not come home? Did you just stay there? What happened?
There was a pretty big break in between. It was which was a whole nother experience. We could probably do another podcast on.
Well, we'll just do kind of an overview of that. You ended up moving, and then the Lord brought you back here. But how did all of that lead to you going back to El Monte? And you made a 4-month commitment to serve there.
Right.
So share about that.
Right. Yeah, well, this takes up to this past December, and I was trying to figure out what the Lord wanted me to do. I'd had a lot of experiences and things, and okay, where do you want me to do? And I guess the Lord kind of put it into my mind that I wonder if there's something down at El Monte with teaching English. That was what I was originally coming down for last summer, but they were on break then, so I worked on
Okay.
construction. So I kind of had that in my mind, but then Paul Wilson, the director here, put out a newsletter about a week after that they were looking for an English teacher, the same job that Emma Janicek did. And I kind of thought for a day, I thought, I'm not fluent in Spanish. I haven't taught English. I don't know if they'd even be interested in me. But anyway, then I sent Paul an email, and he responded, "Yeah, we're
He
interested."
probably responded pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, yeah. I didn't know this. I didn't know it till I got here, but they'd been praying every day for a couple months for somebody to volunteer for their English
I might
department.
be fuzzy on this,
So,
but something similar, I think, happened when Emma went down. As I recall, I
oh,
think Paul and Roxanne were here, and this is where I get fuzzy, but I think one of the pastors here said something like, check with Emma, or it just happened, and all of a
yeah,
sudden she's down there teaching English.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
That's kind of what happened to me. Once Paul responded, I think he talked to Emma,
Yes.
kind of to get a little more background on me. Didn't know me that well, just here a few days. So, but anyway, we talked, and so maybe it's fortunate I only had about 2 weeks to consider it. And 2 weeks later, I was on the plane headed for
Well, I remember
Mexico.
you and I
So,
met at Vibrant before you left, and I was
right,
just taking notes and just celebrating how what the Lord has done in your life and how all these details came together so quickly. So we won't go into any details on this. We shared some this last weekend when our live stream was turned off. But you've recently seen God do a miracle. And how has that increased your faith?
yeah. Well, I'm very fortunate. My rebirth experience was so powerful. I'll never forget that. So it's strong no matter what. I'm very lucky in that regard. But when you watch something up close like this, it's kind of stunning. I think we all walked around the next day. We're just kind of like you're kind of like a zombie, kind of like in a trance. I mean, did what happened? Did we see what happened happen? And we did. And it still takes me back. It still is
You'll
just
never forget it, will you?
breathtaking. No, and it wasn't the only miracle I've seen
Yes.
here. There's been others.
Well, that camp
Hmm.
and ministry training center lives by faith, and over the years has just seen some amazing answers to prayer. And this all makes
Oh,
me think
yeah.
of like the women who came to the tomb after Jesus was raised from the dead, and it says they were frightened, they were in awe, they were speechless. It's like this miracle, and the resurrection's the greatest miracle ever. They were undone.
Yeah.
And just talking to you over the last several days, Lance, you've had some of those similar kind of reactions, right? It's awe. It's like
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it
astonishment.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of pinch yourself. Did that happen? Did I experience what I experienced? And it's real.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very real. There's been others. There's been other things that are just, you know, I don't know how you could convince yourself it's a
No.
coincidence because there's an awful lot of coincidences
It's the
around here.
providence of God, isn't it?
Yes, it
Lance, let me
is.
circle back. Tell us about a
Mm-hmm.
typical day for you. You'll be there a total of 4 months, Lord willing. You
Hmm.
come back the early part of May. What does a day look like?
Yeah, well, Monday through Thursday are pretty similar. We start the classes. I'm teaching English. We start at 8:30, and we work until 2 o'clock. with a couple 15-minute breaks in there, so it's pretty intensive. It's a lot. Uh, my side of it, I kind of had to relearn English.
Yeah.
You know, a
All
lot
the
of
rules and
things I haven't thought about since I was in fifth grade. Some of these things you just know how to speak it. So I've been kind of learning a lot about English along with the students. So that's been interesting. Obviously, I'm learning a lot of Spanish too from being with them all the time, being around them. So I've kind of learned that Google Translator is my best friend around here. I've learned that YouTube is invaluable to me. I can find answers to any English or Spanish question there and play videos for them. And so I'm able to spend more time speaking. But then a typical day, we do that until 2, we eat lunch together, and then generally we are free for an hour or two. That's supposed to be the time they're either studying or we're getting prepared for the next day as teachers.
Is
then
that
there's almost
siesta
always an
time
activity.
for you?
It has been.
That a
There's
boy.
been times I've been,
You're being part of the
there's
culture,
been times
man.
Oh, yeah. There's been times I was exhausted by the end of class, especially early on. There was so much learning on my side. I was working almost around the clock trying to keep up with the students, figure out how to do this. And yeah, it was exhausting. Plus all the other activities. We have prayer meetings. We do a lot of the cleaning here, like the church camp side. Every Thursday night, we go and clean all the cabins over there, and then we have a prayer meeting after that. So it's like 8 o'clock before we're done that night. It's a lot of, it's hard work, but it's a lot of fun, and the prayer nights are incredible. We take turns leading them, so I got to lead it one night. Then Fridays are the days that the students take the exam. So it's kind of their hardest day, my easiest day. Yeah, so they're usually done with exams by mid-morning, and then we do something fun, some kind of fun activity that kind of gives us a chance to speak English all the time.
You went hiking recently, didn't you?
Yeah, we do things like that. Yeah, that was a little different. We went to some ruins last Saturday. I went with the students, and we climbed a mountain to go to the ruins, but everybody's been so kind to me here. They just so accepting, and I love the students. These people are going to go all over the world to some of the most difficult places.
Yes, with the gospel.
Yeah.
And you're playing a key part in that. Lance, what's it like for you, especially this last week? We put out a call to prayer for you to know that your brothers and sisters at Edgewood were praying, interceding for you and for the ministry of Monte. What did that mean to you to have a church family like that?
Yeah. Oh, it meant everything to me. And I want to, I'm in the men's group on Sunday morning there with Terry and Larry and Sue, kind of take turns heading that up. And Jack Carey's become a good friend of mine. And so I stay in touch with all of them too, and I know they're always praying. But to have a whole church praying like they were for the same outcome, and then to have a miracle happen, it just I can't tell you how much it means. It meant to everybody. Everybody knew about it. Everybody knew that Edgewood was behind us and helping.
Well, and
I think I told you the other day, prayers came in from all over the world.
Right.
These missionaries go absolutely everywhere. And so their congregations are all praying too. It's huge.
It is huge. Yeah, it's much bigger than us, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Lance, what have you been learning about the character of God and his heart for the nations?
Yeah. Well, I guess if anything, I've learned the Great Commission isn't a request. It's a direct order.
There you go.
And it has to be taken very seriously. Here, we have a lot of visit because there's a theology school and there's an English school. So the theology students have teachers come in they'll come for maybe 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And so I get to meet all them, and most of them have been missionaries around the world, and to hear their stories, hear the stories that they pass on about salvations that they witnessed, the congregations that grew, the persecution they endured. It really toughens you up. For me, it's very humbling. It makes my job here teaching English in a very safe place kind of pale in comparison, but it's life changing, and it is so vital. The Lord doesn't care what country we're from.
Right.
So it's just as important to be helping them as us. And most of these places they're going, they're not like the United States, where even the most hardened heart has at least heard of Jesus. These places, they've never even heard the name. So
right. Oh man, Lance, as you look ahead, what do you think at this point God has next for you when you come back in May? What does that look like? Or knowing you're walking by faith, and you're like, Lord, the answer is yes to whatever the question is. But what do you anticipate when you get off the plane? Was it May 7th, May 7th, May 8th that you plan to come back?
Yeah, May 8th, I believe. Yeah. Well, kind of two sides of that. At first, I was wondering if I could complete the whole 4 months. I'm not exactly a spring chicken here. And that's kind of turned to, I'm anxious to see home again and everything, but also it's going to be very sad to leave my family here, because we very much become a family. We live together, work together, play together. So I don't really know, but I think I kind of envisioning perhaps I can help El Monte from up there. They need help down here. They need bodies. They need help badly. They're very understaffed. Maybe I can help with that. Maybe help organize some short-term missions to come down here and help with the construction or English, theology, whatever. Maybe that's something. But my real fight is still against abortion. Kind of the struggles I had in between have convinced me, in between coming down here, really showed me that the problem is really churches. We were working in Missouri to get an amendment stopped on abortion, and it ended up passing down there. It's just horrible. It's full-term, unlimited abortion that they ended up passing it. But I came to understand a lot of the churches down there wouldn't even put a sign on their yard in opposition to it, probably 2/3 of them. It really made me understand the problems in the church, and the answer's got to come from the church to get it stopped.
And you must, being at Edgewood, we speak for life, and we're pro-abundant life. That's a term I've heard recently through the Ministry of Pregnancy Resources. So it's not just life; it's abundant life, right? It's saving a life in the womb, and then asking God to save the life of that mother and that father spiritually, and then that's part of our mission as well. So you're going to come back even more fired up about God's work around the world, to our neighbors, our closest neighbors, our children in the womb, right? And we're called to love the little, the least, the forgotten, and the lost. And you're ready to do all you can for that. And now God's also birthed within you a heart for the nations, and that's really our mission here at Edgewood. Is we seek to glorify God by making disciples of Jesus among our neighbors and the nations. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. And before we sign off, Lance, let me give you just an opportunity to say another word. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with the Edgewood family?
Yes, the only thing we didn't touch on that I'd like to is that men are suffering from abortion too. And they're out there, they participated in it. Men tend to dismiss it. They're like me, they're so We don't like to admit weakness. It was so hard for me. It took me 40 years to finally do something about it. I'd urge any men out there, you need to come in. You need to get things right. You participated in a murder, and you need to find relief from that. And so I can't be strong enough to them that they need to come, and the help's there.
Yeah.
And pregnancy resources will help any man.
Hope and help and forgiveness in Jesus. Lance, thank you for joining us from Mexico. I was going to say sunny Mexico, but you said they've been burning off the sugar cane, so it's not real sunny there today. Thank you for joining us today for our 4G podcast. Keep living on mission for the glory of God and for the fame of His glorious name. Until next time.